In this session, I would like to talk about exception handling. So we need to understand what is error and what is exception and how do you handle exceptions. So being a data analyst or no data engineer or any kind of programmer or developer, so while doing programming, you may make mistakes. So the errors occurs, the exceptions occurs. So we should know how to handle the exceptions. For example, sometimes we'll just forget to enclose the string like this print hello, then this is going to generate an error, and the error is syntax error. So EOL means end of line error. So we have missed the single quotation here, so that's why we have got the syntax error. There are different types of no exceptions or errors. So importantly, we can classify into two types: checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Unchecked means not strictly. Checked exceptions are the one which are strictly checked by the compiler and also interpreter. So we'll now take a couple of examples in this session and how to handle them. So what is the difference between error and exception? Error means simply it's an issue, so which no which enables the program not to complete. So what about the exception? Exception means this is the problem which can occur at runtime and also at the compile time. So the program is halted uh, in order to complete. So we should know how to handle these exceptions and errors. So you can have a full list of exceptions from the documentation of Python. You can see built-in exceptions here. So this is the current version 3.12.0, and you can have the different types of exceptions, and we can also define exceptions, so which are user defined exceptions. Means based on the checking, we can classify into two types: checked, unchecked. And based on the definition, now we'll call them as, we define two types. So first is built-in exceptions, means which are already known to the interpreter, predefined one. And the other category is user defined, means being a user we can also define exceptions. So let us see how to use built-in exceptions. And in order to handle exceptions, we have to use these blocks: try and except block. So your code or your line must be put into the try block, and then whenever the exception is raised, then that could be transferred to the except block. Then we have to display some meaningful statement so that the error can be understood. So these are the blacks. So the general syntax is this: try, you can write the statements here, and then except. Whenever the particular exception type is matched, then you have to display some message. For example, within the try block, exception is raised, then it will find the suitable exception type, and then you have to catch the exception and then display the message. So exception type 1, type 2, like this. So you can have multiple levels. And finally, if all of the above are script, then finally you can also have the else block, wherein you can display some message. So let us take an example. uh, in mathematics you cannot divide a number by 0, so I'm taking two variables here, a comma b, which is equals to 4 comma 0, and then simply performing the operation a by b. So here you can see this error, division by 0 error. Got it? This is division by 0 error, and this is the message or text, division by 0. This message has generated error. So if you put these two lines in the try and except block, then we can handle this exception. So this is the same, a comma b is equals to 4 comma 0. It means a is equals to 4 and b is equals to 0. And then within the try block we are printing the putting the statement print of a by b, which generates an exception. And this is the exception type. If the type of exception generated from this statement is division by error, then we'll display this message. So division by error, so b should not be 0. So the statement or this information should be very meaningful. Else we want to print a no exception. So what is the output over here? It will print a division by 0 and b should not be 0 because b value is 0. So I'm running this, you can see the output. What if b value is not 0? Let us make it this as 2. So 4 divided by 2, then it will not generate an exception. Then it says no exception. The result is displayed and then it prints no exception. You can see the result is 2.0 and it has printed no exception, right? So depends on the generation of the exception. You can handle the exception like this. Next, this is another example. So try, we are opening a file, test file in write mode, and f.write. So we are writing this text. You can write anything. And then if the file could not be opened, that means if the exception type is IO error, IO stands for input output error, then this message is printed, error and could not find the file or read data. If the exception is not generated, which is of type IO error, then simply we print the message content written successfully and file is closed. So as the file is opened successfully, then we have written the content and then finally displaying the message. So no exception is generated here. So let us take an example how to generate an exception. Let's say we are opening this file in read mode. That means we do not have write permission. So f is equals to open up the file in read mode. So W stands for write and R stands for read. So writing the content, and if this exception is generated, we could not find a file or read else it says content written successfully. So what is the output here? Because as we don't have the permission to write, so the exception is generated, IO error, and the error message is this: error, could not find a file or read. So if you have the right permission, no exception is generated. So that is an example. Next, let us take one more example. I'm opening a file, test file in read mode, right? And then we're writing this. If we are not sure what type of exception is there, so here we are strictly specifying IO error. So if we are not sure what type of exception is there, so in that case you can simply write an except block without type. Then what it generates? So it has generated exception is generated, and that is catched by except block, and we got the message. And we can also use finally. So finally block, that means if all of the above exceptions are not matched, then the control comes to the finally block. So this is the general syntax. In try block, the exception is generated, then the interpreter checks for the appropriate exception type, right? If it is matched, then raise the exception, handle the exception. If all the exceptions are not matched, then the control comes to the finally blocks and the statements of the finally block are executed. So let us say we are opening a file, test file in write mode, and this is to be written, closing the file, and then finally. So this message is compulsorily displayed, always execute finally block code block. That means this is the default action. This is the default action. So no exception is generated even though the control reached to the finally block and the message has been displayed. Next, here, so if you provide wrong input, for example, this is a user defined method, ask input, ask integer, we are looking for integer as input. Then try, within the try block we are writing the input statement, so which now ask for the integer, then you should enter integer converted into integer, and then that is assigned to value. Then if there is an exception, then control comes here and this message is to be printed. Otherwise, finally it will say finally I executed, and then we want to print the input. So let's say this is definition, so we need to call this method. So I'm calling here. So please enter an integer. Let's say I'm entering 15.0. Then what is there? Looks like you didn't enter integer, so this message has been displayed. And of course the kind of control also transferred to finally block. So finally I executed, and then this statement is not executed because we got an error. So it's, you see, unbound local error. It's an unbound local error. Local variable value is referenced before assignment, so it is not assigned. Understand? So this value is not assigned, so that's why we got that. So we should enter only integer. So that was the error here. So if I rerun it again and let me enter integer, this time I'm entering 25. 25 is assigned to 25 is assigned to value, right? And then no exception is generated, so this statement is not printed. Exception is not generated. From here the control transferred to finally, then it says finally I executed, and then value is printed, which is 25. Got it? So this is how you handle the exception. So here we have one more example. So calling the method, defining the method again, taking input which should be integer, then this is displayed, and now we'll just ask the user to enter only integer. Strictly we are asking the user to enter integer only. If he enters other values, then again it is displayed. Try again, please enter an integer. So let me no, this is definition. Let me run this, and then calling the function. Now it is asking input. So for example, I have entered 5.0 float. So you see, looks like you didn't enter integer. Again we are calling. Again we are now displaying the input method. So unless until I enter integer, it's keep on asking me to enter only integer. Again let me say I'm entering some 1 2 3.56. this is also float. No, only one time it has considered. Then say finally saying value 0. Exception is generated here. Got it? So it's ask only one more time. I'm running it again. Let's say I'm entering 6.2. done. This time let me enter 5 as integer. So done. So the value is generated. That means exception has been generated only once. Next, so we are continuously keep on checking whether the user has entered or not. So this is same, and this is the message which is displayed, and we are writing continue, right? We are writing continue within the while loop, while true. So if it is true, then we'll ask for an integer, and then we display the message. Looks like you didn't enter integer. If the integer is not enter, then we are saying continue, means skip the current iteration, and then again continue, else what it does, that's an integer. If you enter integer, then we are using break, means exit from the loop, and finally it displays the message. So let me say, for example, this is definition, calling the function again. I'm entering 5.3. so then looks like you didn't enter integer. Then finally I executed, means the control come to here, and then again it is asking please enter an integer. Understand? Enter an integer. So let me also not enter integer here. So again the same, again it is asking, keep on asking. Let me enter float for the third time. So again it is asking, right? So let me enter integer this time. So 1 2 3, then done. So break, yep, that's an integer, so that has been displayed, and then break means exit from the loop. So like this you can handle the exceptions, and this is another example. So we are using the same, right? We are just modifying. What is that? We are using finally block. Within the finally, the same. What is the difference between that and this? So we're taking input, then continue here, else. So here we are printing the value and then break. So here also we are not printing the value, right, but we're simply breaking. So that means the difference between previous code and this is, instead of printing at the last, so we just added that to the else block. We added that to the else block and then break. 25.6 not an integer. Again it asks 12.3 not an integer, so this may enter integer, so this break. So that is the difference. This is a small no assessment here. So handle the exception thrown by the code below using the try and except block. So here is a for loop for I value in ABC, and we are doing I square because these values are string type and we cannot perform this operation I square, so that is going to generate an error. So this is an exception. So how to handle it? So for example, we want to display a simple information. If I in ABC, then if there is if these statements generate an exception, we want to display a message an error occurred. Simply an error occurred, instead of displaying all these things. Or else you can also add the message here. Then this is another example. We are creating variables x, y, then performing division by 0 here, so this will generate an error, right? This is division by 0, and then instead of that what we're doing is division by 0 is caught, and then we display the message can't divide by 0, and finally we'll just display the message all done. So here not all done, can't divide by 0, then all done. So we are just displaying the proper information when the exception is occurring. Then this is also another example. We are defining a function. The task over here is write a function which asks for an integer and prints the square of it. So using the while loop, try, except clause blocks. So defining a method ask, then using a loop, while loop, while the condition is true or while it is true, then we'll take an integer from the user, and then this message is displayed an error occurred, please try again, then continuing else. That means if the user has entered the valid integer, then control comes to else block and then break, exit from the loop, and finally we want to print thank you, your number squared is whatever the number you enter, star star means to the n to the power 2, so it will give us the square of the number. So let me say we give wrong number, so that means 23.1 is not integer, so exception occurred, then the control came over here and the message has been displayed an error occurred, please try again. Now again continue, so skipping from the current iteration, again the loop is continued. Let me enter valid number list, this time 45, which is integer, so no exception is raised. I hope it is clear. No exception is raised, and then you exit from the while loop, then finally it says thank you, your number squared is this, 45 square is 2025. So guys, in this way you can handle exception while doing programming. So the data scientist or data analyst, even business analyst, so whenever you are doing the programming, so sometimes the exceptions are generated, so you should be having the skills how to handle the exception by using try, except blocks. So here I have presented you couple of examples, so if you just know these concepts, then that is enough, not more than this. So thanks for watching, and do subscribe our channel for more videos.